Hello all! Recently in Star Trek we've been getting a large amount of focus placed on a specific vessel, the USS Voyager. Its legacy, characters and even the ship itself have cropped up here and there in canon series, and altogether it has painted a concrete picture of what happens to the ship in the years since its return to the Alpha Quadrant. There have been books and speculation since Star Trek Prodigy, and I already covered what happened to the characters, but this is basically a summary of what we know happened to the ship itself. Voyager returned in 2379, pretty much on Earth's doorstep, and was immediately greeted by a small Federation task force that was expecting a Borg incursion. This was a historic moment for the Federation, the return of a seemingly lost ship, a near impossible feat, a 70-plus year journey completed in just 7 years, and in the end of the Dominion War. This was a ray of hope returning to Starfleet, and it instigated a short burst in development and renewed exploration, albeit a short-lived one, before the dourness of 2385 muted the Federation once again. The Intrepid-class vessel was replete with technologies acquired in its Delta Quadrant travels, and even some gear from an alternate future of 2404 that the ship should not technically have owned. So the vessel, despite still being able to serve, would have been retired for study and turned over to Starfleet researchers to explore all these logs and additions. A lot of the items that were not directly personal effects were left aboard the ship, such as collected specimens and devices. After celebrations and debriefings, the vessel itself would have been taken into Starfleet custody for inventory and the crew's possessions returned, while the crew went their own ways, reassignment, holiday, catching up and so on. The vessel itself was thoroughly explored from 2379 to 2381, and its advancements studied in detail. From Voyager, we would see the implementation of Borg-enhanced technology folded into their latest ship designs, culminating in the Sagan class at the turn of the century, but that was still 20 years away. Its studies and experimentation of the quantum slipstream drive were utilised extensively and produced the prototype USS Dauntless, the project which was overseen by Admiral Janeway in 2383, and developments in holography increased the usage of holographic crews in places. Its extensive databases of finds were collected into a holo recreation of Captain Janeway, and that was to serve as an advisor to further missions to the Delta Quadrant. After 20 years or so, even civilian Federation craft could obtain holographic crew modules. Plans immediately were set into motion to create another vessel based on the trove from Voyager, and ratified into its namesake, the USS Voyager NCC 74656-A. This was to be the Lamar Special Class starship, and it was constructed at Utopia Planitia, Mars. This is where the Intrepid class was developed too, and the new Voyager would follow many of the design cues of that class, with a crew of over 800 across 29 decks. I'll do a breakdown on that class when we know more, but this ship may not yet be approved for full commission. However, it was to undertake missions as part of its trials. The project too appears to be overseen by Admiral Janeway, considering the pull she had. Ultimately, the legacy of Voyager was confirmed when in 2401, as part of Starfleet's Frontier Day, a remembrance of Federation vessels and Starfleet's first deep space exploration missions, a Pathfinder-class USS Voyager B was seen to be newly commissioned. This Pathfinder, like its precursor Voyagers, drew extensively from the tried and tested design of the Intrepid class, as well as refined the technology that had been in development for the past 2 decades. The exact location of the original Voyager's stripping for parts was classified, but it was likely to be the Portello system, and all information around the vessel was treated as incredibly sensitive. When the vessel was completely stripped of sensitive parts, its crew reassigned, and new prototypes underway, the contributions it had made were undeniable, as well as the historic voyage, so the order was given to preserve the vessel as a museum ship. In 2381, the ship was officially decommissioned and exhibits created inside the vessel, along with replica displays of uniforms and finds. The ship retained much of its original technology and databases that were not classified, such as Borg regeneration alcoves and bioneural gel packs. Holographic emitters were expanded into the hallways in every room of the vessel to aid in presentations. The vessel was then to be transported to Earth, where it would be landed and open to the public by the USS Cerritos for its grand opening. This was not a smooth ride, and a series of malfunctions ensued, beginning with the release of a dormant macrovirus, which had been overlooked, and ended with the course being diverted to there were issues. Fortunately, the vessel was restored to working order eventually, and it made land at Starfleet Command. Here it stayed for several months before being returned to Earth orbit, where it was then to stay, continuing its function as a piece of history. By 2399, the vessel had been relocated to the Long-Stay Fleet Museum of Alphen Prime, alongside such vessels as the Enterprise A, Defiant, and Kronos 1. So, there we have it. Voyager's entire life history is now documented on screens, from its launch on stardate 48315.6 in 2371, to its retirement a decade or so later, and its preservation as a piece of living history. Its exact state of operation is unknown, but generally vessels at Alphen Prime were expected never to leave again, so it's likely its warp engines were inert, although the rest of its facilities were probably still operational. The crew and namesake, however, would continue on, and even in the 32nd century, the Voyager is recognised as a pinnacle starship of the Federation, which is understandable considering it crossed the galaxy, broke first contact records, and leapfrogged Federation science by a decade or two. Thanks for watching this coverage of the end of days of Voyager. I've been Rick. Thanks again, and goodbye.